Time for Talking Pints, and tonight it's a remote Talking Pints. I'm here in the United Kingdom, and Emma Jo Morris, who is the political editor of the Breitbart News Network, joins me from New York. Emma Jo, welcome to the programme. And I do have an American beer, I promise you.
Cheers. I'll take your word for it.
Now, no, it is an American beer, and I'll have you know that there are quite a lot of American IPAs and other beers that are now freely on sale here in the United Kingdom. Who would have thought it? Now, you're there at Breitbart News, and I must, before we get to the heart of this, I think, very important story, we must talk about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, author of Hillbilly Elegy, a book that sold in huge numbers, a book that actually showed the disconnect that was taking place between the big cities on the coasts and middle America. And J.D. Vance, somebody that I've met many, many times myself, he won the primary in Ohio last night. For those that don't know, he's going to be the Republican candidate running for Senate. He had been miles behind the other candidates. And then 3 weeks ago, a guy called Donald J. Trump endorsed him, and he won it. So, Emma Jo, reflections and thoughts, please, on J.D. Vance's victory and the present power that Donald Trump enjoys amongst Republican supporters.
Yeah, I mean, this was a fascinating race because, like you said, J.D. was struggling throughout most of the campaign, and then all of a sudden, Donald Trump swoops in and made that endorsement, which I think was absolutely brilliant and a perfect endorsement for Trump, a perfect fit for him. He did a rally for JD and just he took off. He absolutely took off. And it goes to show that this is still Trump's party. You know, the GOP, the Republican Party, is not going back to its establishment ways. It's not. The voters are not ready for that, and they don't want that. And they still want somebody who is going to fight for their interests, which often clash with the interests of the establishment, you know, of Washington. Because that city and the Beltway in general, even in New York, is so far removed from the reality and the life of the voters and the people in the rest of the country. And Ohio, I think, is going to be a really interesting race because JD is now in the general election going to be running against a politician who has been in politics for 20 years, Tim Ryan, the Democrat, and he has presided over Ohio, especially the state that JD is running in, being absolutely decimated by the globalist economic policy, by exporting, you know, manufacturing jobs to China, by, you know, focusing on a corporate-centric, bottom-line-centric economic policy, an economic policy that was devised on Wall Street. And I think that JD is really going to go for that in Trump form and really hit him on that and ask him to answer for the last 20 years where Ohioans have been so hurt.
Yeah, and he does bring some real intellectualism, I think. And, you know, if he wins, he'll bring it into the Senate with him. No, it's been very, very interesting. Now, Emma Jo, in a previous incarnation, there you were at the New York Post. It's October 2020. There's a really big election going on for the presidency. And a laptop emerges from a character called Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden. Just give us a brief resume, Emma Jo, of what was found on that laptop and what you chose to put on the front page of the New York Post.
Yeah, so I obtained the laptop really like just about 4 weeks before voting day. And there are hundreds of thousands of documents on this computer. They're all disorganized. You know, this is somebody else's personal computer. They're not going to be, you know, necessarily cataloged in an easily accessible way. And obviously his business is mixed in with his personal life and mixed in with all kinds of other things and his subscriptions and whatever. So this is a huge trove of documents that I got. And we were kind of under the gun to A, verify their authenticity, and B, find the things that were newsworthy. So you're going through it, and Hunter has so much business all over the world and so much business everywhere, some of which, we already knew about, that Peter Schweitzer had previously reported on and that the New York Post had previously reported on. And then you have to parse through that to find the stuff that we didn't previously know. So I had guidance from my then editor-in-chief, where we were talking about what are we going to publish? What are we looking for here? And she said, I know that Hunter Biden is a consultant. That's not news. I know that he's sketchy even. That's not news. I want to know how deep does this go? Let's break a story that is going to be really something that the world has never seen before. So I took that advice and I went onto the hard drive and I started looking through the Burisma documents, because Joe Biden had previously said that he had a Ukrainian official fired because of investigations of Burisma. So I wanted to know what was the more intimate details of that story. So I started looking through the Burisma contacts, and lo and behold, I found the first story, which, your producers have put up on screen. That was that cover that said, "Thank you for the opportunity to meet your father."
So let's just recap that for those that are not on this story. So basically, you've got Hunter Biden is doing business in Ukraine. He is earning $50,000 to $80,000 a month, working for an oil and gas company, despite having no experience in the industry whatsoever. And the contacts within that company met with the then Vice President of the United States of America. Is that about it?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Aside from that, we also uncovered on the hard drive, which we also published in side stories that day, that and imagine that this is a sidebar story, but that, the White House was leaking conference calls to Burisma. The White House was leaking documents to Burisma through a PR company that was hired by Hunter Biden on behalf of Burisma on the U.S. side. So there was just heaps of corruption. What appears to be corruption, with regard to Hunter, this Ukrainian company, Burisma, and Joe Biden, implicating Joe Biden directly. And that was the first tranche of stories. And then on the second day, we uncovered the CEFC deal, and we published that on the second drop, which was that Hunter, the infamous line, Hunter will hold 10% equity in a company in partnership with the Chinese Communist Party, 10% for the big guy, Joe Biden.
The big guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you published that story, and then there was a Russia link as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, that actually wasn't uncovered by the New York Post. That was uncovered by the Senate committee. The Republicans in the Senate did a big deep dive and investigation into Hunter and his business, and they uncovered that Hunter had received a $3 million payment from the widow of the mayor of Moscow. You can't make it up.
Astonishing stuff. Well, you really can't make it up. But Emma Jo, here's the really important part of this story. So great journalism, from you guys at the New York Post and others in revealing all of this. And it gets published, but then it appears to just disappear as a story. And from what I can see of it, and you were involved directly, the rest of mainstream media refused to cover it, and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all our friends on the West Coast just literally buried this story. Is that about what happened?
Yeah, so that was what ended up becoming the real scandal. Is when I went to sleep on the night of October 13th, the night before we published our first story of 2020, I thought that I was going to deliver a story about what appeared to be corruption by one man and his family, Joe Biden. And what I realized very soon in the morning of October 14th, the day that we published, was that this was actually going to be a story of corruption, not of one man, but of an entire system and an entire institution of multiple players, including the security state, including big tech, including the legacy media, and including the Democratic Party, a conspiracy among those parties to protect that man and his family.
And Emma Jo, what I've seen over the last few weeks are the New York Times and others now acknowledging that the stories you wrote were actually correct.
So they're doing kind of a funny thing. They are saying, they're acknowledging that the laptop is authentic, but they won't go as far. They're stopping just short of acknowledging the reporting by the New York Post, which is very strange, but they're making a distinction between the laptop and that authenticity and the authenticity of the reporting based on the laptop in the New York Post. They still don't want to go so far as to implicate Joe Biden or to acknowledge that he is implicated in all of this. But it's a very bizarre thing. It feels like a head game, actually, where they're saying, we're doing this reporting based on the laptop, and the laptop is authentic. The Washington Post actually hired a big tech team to do a forensic analysis of the laptop where they found it was authentic, but then they won't acknowledge what's on it. It's very bizarre.
No, wow. No, it really, really is. One of the reasons that Elon Musk quoted for his audacious bid, now accepted by the board of Twitter, was the suppression of those very stories that you were working on. Can Elon Musk come along and save the day, or is that me being wildly over-optimistic?
No, I don't think it's overly optimistic. I think if you're operating based on what he said, it kind of looks that way. And there are many things that he can do to help rectify this situation. Namely, he can obtain the company documents from the day and the time leading up to this event. He can hand those over to Congress. He can hand those over to the DOJ if anything that he presumes is criminal went on, which I would imagine that it's at least walking that line, if not over that line. I think that he can obviously run the platform politically neutral going forward, which is, that's what he has pledged to do. And that's the reason why he says he bought the platform in the first place. So there are things that he can do. And I think that he will try at least, or that's what he's claimed, to save the day. But I think that he's going to face, as we've seen, with Trump and as we've seen in Brexit, that, somebody can come in with intentions and honest intentions and a plan even to execute something that the establishment doesn't like. But when you have to actually come up against them, they will put up a fight. They're not just going to toss you the keys. And I think that that's what Elon Musk is about to experience.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Final thought, Emma Jo. Abortion is not a big political issue on this side of the pond. There is a pretty broad acceptance of it, arguments about the number of weeks, etc. And there are some, of course, completely opposed. In America, things are very different. A leak from the Supreme Court, unlike anything that's ever been leaked before. Actually, this has been done, hasn't it, by Democrat supporters, and it doesn't actually really help the Republican Party. That's my view. What do you think?
We don't know exactly who the leaker is. It would appear that it was an activist Democrat, probably a clerk, I would imagine. It's like an intern of justices of the Supreme Court who have access to these documents, who are law students. I would imagine it's one of them. This was clearly, in my opinion, done as a way to try to intimidate the conservative justices on the court. We have a rioting tendency in America, and when people are really triggered, they tend to go and try and, basically mob justice their way, to getting their interests met. And I think that that's probably what the intention was of this leak, was to get people riled up, to get people out in the streets, and to exert a tremendous amount of public pressure, which Politico actually kind of wrote in their story, that the person who leaked it so that there could be a public response before the decision was made final. And no matter what you think of abortion is not really relevant. It's the fact that our Supreme Court is sacred, and the process for it has been undermined in this act in a really gross and way of trying to incite against the justices.
It absolutely has.
Of the institution, that's for sure.
No, it absolutely has. Well, temperatures are high in American politics. It's going to be a fascinating year. And Emma Jo Morris, I want to say thank you for coming on Talking Pints, and great work. Thank you very much indeed.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.